principles and methodologies to improve effectiveness and efficiency through information and communications technology. Recalls that ICT is an important pervasive enabler to realize the mission of Parliament, which represents and acts as the voice of the people in fulfilling its constitutional functions of passing laws and overseeing executive action. Acknowledges that the nomination was based on how enterprise architecture was applied during the development of the 2009 to 2014 ICT strategy for Parliament. Further acknowledges that the award is not just recognition of past accomplishment, but it is also a promise of continued capability in Parliament to leverage value from ICT, and congratulate all those in our Parliament who contributed to this achievement. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? No. In which case, we move on. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, the Honourable the Chief Whip.
Honourable Speaker, I move that the House, notwithstanding Rule 29, which provides for the sequence of proceedings, limits the business for the sitting of the 6th of November 2013 to questions to the President. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections are agreed to. The next item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? The ANC.
I thank you, Speaker. Free Marwan Bogati campaign. The ANC finds it very unfortunate that a motion without notice on the launch of the Robben Island Declaration on the 27th October 2013, which calls for the freedom of Marwan Bogati and prisoners in Palestine, was objected by both the ACDP and the DA. The global campaign for the freedom of Marwan Bogati and other Palestinians political prisoners has the support of many of our freedom-loving people and those who sacrificed and fought for our freedom, such as Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Ahmed Kathrada, and the ANC. Archbishop Tutu stated, and I quote, "As South Africans, we feel very proud to be able to put our experience of the power of solidarity into action for the benefit of others. South Africa could not have achieved its democracy without the contribution of friends around the world. We learned that when people unite a righteous cause, there is nothing that can stop them. We now firsthand that had it not been for the uniting of the people of the world against our apartheid regime, our icons of struggle, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Governor Mbeki, and Ahmed Kathrada, would not have been freed, and we would not be standing here today calling for the freedom of Marwan Bogati and other Palestinian political prisoners. The DA and SCDP must remember this. I thank you, Speaker.
The DA.
Speaker, yesterday, chaos broke out in Cape Town CBD as protesters looted shops, broke down trading stores, injured innocent vendors, destroyed public property, and disrupted public transport services. The actions by members and supporters of the ANC Youth League, led by ANC Councillor Loyiso Ngotla and expelled ANC Councillor Andile Lili, yesterday
order.
Is completely unacceptable. It is a clear proof that these thugs have no real service delivery concerns, and their actions are all part of the ANC ongoing ungovernability campaign in the ANC in the Western Cape. You will not succeed. The ANC continues to whip up the false figures about the Western Cape, whilst every single national and international report shows that the Western Cape is the best well-run province in the country. Over the past year, unemployment in the Western Cape have decreased from 27% to 25% because the DA policy on jobs is #1. The ANC cannot stand this, Mr. Speaker. The ANC in Gauteng has failed. Unemployment has increased from 29% to 30% in the past year. In Limpopo, unemployment is so rife that for every one person that is looking for a job, 2 people have completely given up looking for a job. And know your ANC.
Oh,
The
member, your
ANC
time
will
has
never
expired.
succeed in making the Western Cape ungovernable. We will win.
Your time has expired. Cope.
Honorable Speaker,
Order, members.
the intensity of service protests have grown to a point where an impression can be created that government has either lost or losing control of the wave of violence that is spreading throughout the country. It appears that any disgruntled groups of people can simply gather together a mob, exploiting genuine citizens' grievances, to go and loot shops and other businesses within the cities and towns. This leads to the destruction of commercial and public properties and threatens the security of citizens, tourists, and the country as a whole. This needs to be condemned in the strongest terms possible. It appears that government does not have a coherent approach on how to handle and prevent these violent protests, including the uprooting of the unruly elements that often infiltrate and exploit genuine grievances. This gives an impression that the police and the intelligence services are not adequately prepared and trained to deal with such situations. The people who invaded Cape Town yesterday, including the criminal element, traveled into the city by trains, taxis, and buses. Why were the police and the intelligence services not in place to prevent the looting of businesses in the CBD? What guarantees do we have that this will not happen again? Thank you.
The ANC. ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The ANC congratulates the people of Lekwa Municipality in Extension 8, Standerton, on the recent unveiling of a multi-million rand integrated human settlements project. This project will deliver 4,000 houses together, which will be integrated with schools and shopping centers, among other facilities. It will also create close to 21,000 job opportunities, which will include 1,000 permanent ones. On a much more sustainable basis, this initiative will boost the municipality's revenue up to 60 million rand a year. This integrated human settlement project is one among a series that will be delivered by the ANC government in various municipalities of South Africa as part of its renewed mandate of bringing apartheid patterns of settlement and spatial development. The project will be counted alongside the N2 Joslovo project in Cape Town, Konubia in Durban, Cosmo City in Johannesburg, and Lipalale in Limpopo, to mention but a few. As the ANC, we'll do everything in our power to ensure that we continue to build a country where people can live together, play together, pray together, and learn together. I thank you, Speaker.
The IFP. The IFP.
Honorable Speaker, Mkhanyakude remains dry. On the 30th of October 2008, the IFP released a statement concerning the lack of access to water that the residents of the Mkhanyakude district have been struggling with. Exactly 5 years, nothing has happened, despite the numerous broken promises by the government to the people of Mkhanyakude that have gone unfulfilled and will probably be reiterated for the benefit of the upcoming elections. People have been reduced to fetching water from rivers because water schemes in Shemola and Kwajoba are dysfunctional. It seems the tactic of government, especially the Department of Water Affairs, is to promise the people one thing to get votes, while in reality they will be forgotten once the government gets what it wants. This issue goes beyond political affiliation. The people are suffering because leaders are refusing to take responsibility for the promises they made to get people's votes. The people will continue to distract the government and even the electoral process if this situation is allowed to continue. I thank you.
The UDM. We don't have the UDM in the House. We then move on. The ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. On Sunday, the 27th of October, the Sunday Times published a cartoon by Shapiro which intended to ridicule the Board of Cricket in India. The use of the image of the Lord Ganesha to accomplish this is totally unacceptable. What sets the new South Africa apart from the old is the respect we accord one another. That as South Africans, we not only tolerate and accept diversity, but we accord the deepest respect to other people's religious convictions. We affirm that no part of society in South Africa should be treated with indignity and disrespect. Any action that offends one section of society should offend all sections. Freedom of expression is not an unfettered right within the Bill of Rights. Accordingly, the African National Congress calls upon the Sunday Times and Jonathan Shapiro to apologize to the Hindu community in particular and all decent, caring, peace-loving South Africans. Thank you.
UCDP.
Mr. Speaker, the United Christian Democratic Party is shocked at the news of confessions by Cornelia de Wet absolving the teenage boy accused of the Steenkamp farm murders that happened in Grigwa Town in the Northern Cape. We are a troubled nation, any way you look at this. The fact that there are possibly many farm murders that remain unsolved where the Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging his squad and this security company Boere Beskermings Forum could have been involved, and perhaps many others where innocents were framed or blamed is cause for concern. The remnants of apartheid are evidence in this, and political leaders across the board need to take steps in addressing these. It saddens us in the UCDP that there are Afrikaner groupings hell-bent and intent on spreading such racial hatred as to murder their own in order to instill racial hatred. The surfacing of these harms the genuine cause and outcry against killing of farmers. We would like to assert further that our intelligence services are failing us on these matters. How can it be that we have such racially motivated terrorists in our midst and their actions are only revealed through a confession and not as a result of their intelligence gathering? It boggles the mind to think that there have been racially influenced responses to farm killings such as the recent October march. Yet there are these cases like this one. Finally, the UCDP condemns the existence and actions of the AWB squad and the security company. We condemn the threats against Cornelia de Wet, who has taken the plunge to spill the beans on these despicable deeds. We hope the police will take these investigations seriously and shed more light on other crimes that could possibly have been instituted by these parties. Ke a leboga.
The DA.
Thank you, Speaker. This month, October, 60 years ago, the 1953 Bantu Education Act was promulgated. The funding for Bantu children was 14% of that allocated for white children. Gardening was part of the Bantu education curriculum. White children were exposed to art and to science. The opportunities for Bantu education learners were severely limited. It is this outcome that we cannot allow to continue to haunt us. We cannot allow the quality of education we provide our young people to be determined by the circumstances of their birth. Today, there is one curriculum for all children, but the achievements of learners are still powerfully linked to the circumstances of their birth. Our children are disadvantaged if they are poor. They are disadvantaged if they live in rural areas. They are disadvantaged if they live in dysfunctional provinces such as Limpopo and the Eastern Cape. The argument that the Bantu education system was better than the system we have now is nonsensical. It is nonsensical. There was little or no potential for excellence within the Bantu education curriculum. There is potential for excellence now, but that potential must be harnessed. Our learners deserve the best, no matter the circumstances of their birth, and it starts with quality education everywhere.
The ANC.
Speaker, the African National Congress congratulates the Progressive Youth Alliance in general and the South African Students' Congress in particular on resounding and overwhelming victories recorded in the recent Student Representative Council elections held around the country. They lead in universities such as Wits, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan, previously led by DASO, and at the University of the Western Cape. Young people have rejected the DA and its DASO by conferring upon SASCO 100% of the seats available in the council. The results of these elections have unequivocally demystified the myth spread by prophets of doom that young people have lost faith in mass democratic movements as led by the African National Congress. In many campuses, SASCO and the ANC Youth League contested and defeated those who posture as having the monopoly of the youth vote, particularly the youth from middle-class backgrounds. The African National Congress calls upon the PYA to consolidate their gains by closing ranks against opportunistic elements, display unity in action across all its components, and serving young people with selflessness, diligence, and distinction. We have no doubt that the unstoppable PYA tsunami will never betray the confidence the youth continues to have in the Congress movement when they govern these structures. I thank you, Speaker.
The IFP.
Thank you, Honourable
IFP.
Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the IFP today calls on the Human Rights Commission to urgently take note of the conduct of the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University after it denied admission to 3 blind matriculants from Mtata's School for the Blind who dreamt of pursuing their studies and who are now devastated by the university's decision. It seriously calls into question government's commitments made in this House yesterday that it is complying with the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities and that it's doing everything possible to ensure that children with disabilities enjoy equal rights. The fact remains that people with disabilities are still sidelined in our society and often treated as second-class citizens. The IFP denounces the university's decision. What makes matters worse is that the Deputy Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities acknowledged during a recent visit to the university that the university does not have the necessary facilities to accommodate sight and hearing impaired students, yet nothing has happened to date. While this incident caught the media attention, there are scores of learners with disabilities that face similar challenges on a daily basis. The IFP calls on the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities and also on the Minister of Higher Education to urgently intervene in this matter. Furthermore, they must conduct an urgent audit as to how many tertiary institutions are failing disabled students by not allowing them access and the necessary assistance to further their studies, which dashes their hopes and their chances of living meaningful lives. I thank you.
Cope.
Honourable Speaker, it is with immense pride that I congratulate Orlando Pirates for reaching the CAF Champions League final that will start this upcoming weekend in Orlando. All of us, whether football enthusiasts, rugby diehards, or cricket bandits, must celebrate the great achievement of one of the great iconic football clubs for our football-obsessed country. Although Orlando Pirates held aspirants to a goalless draw at the Orlando Stadium 2 weeks earlier and followed this up with a 1-1 draw against aspirants in Tunisia in their semi-final second leg encounter, it was enough for Pirates on the basis of the away goals rule. The players, coaching and technical staff, as well as the management and stalwart Pirates supporters all deserve to be congratulated. It was a collective exercise with each party playing its part. Speaker, let us recall that it was the Buccaneers, no less, which a year after we achieved our democracy, who thrilled the nation by winning the Champions League trophy. No other South African team achieved this feat. Congress of the People believes, as I am, certainly all other parties equally believe the Buccaneers will play beautifully this upcoming weekend and in Egypt. and repeat the success of the earlier campaign in 1995. It is time to shine internationally. In order for the Pioneers to do really well, the Honourable Speaker, as well as all of us in the National Assembly, should join together to wish them well and throw our full support behind them. They must know they are playing for all of us, and what they achieve is for their glory and ours. Go Buccaneers, go. I thank you.
The ANC.
Honourable Speaker, the ANC is proud of the commitment from some of the country's institutions of higher learning in transformation while producing good quality work as well. Researchers at the University of KwaZulu-Natal have determined that the University of Fort Hare leads the country in achieving transformation of its academic staff while maintaining good quality research output. In the study, Governor Zondo and Makhoba, all from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, utilized a new indicator called Equity Index to interpret the demographic profile of the staff and student in all South African universities. When the 2011 Equity Index of academic staff at these institutions were plotted against their 2011 per capita research output, University of Fort Hare was the only university to fall firmly in the quadrant depicting good equity and good per capita research output. UKZN and University of Western Cape also fell in this quadrant but were very close to the boundary. It is interesting to note that these three historically disadvantaged universities, but partly the UKZN, has begun to shrug off the legacy of apartheid. The researchers concluded that the other 20 universities in South Africa could learn important lessons from these three universities. ANC congratulates the formerly disadvantaged institutions on their progress and dedication to succeed. I thank you.
The DA.
Honorable Speaker, last Thursday, that is the 24th of October 2013, people wearing ANC t-shirts were seen tearing down DA registration posters in Ga-Rankuwa. These posters urge people to register to vote during the next year's national and provincial elections. The DA has reported this vandalism to the local police station. A week prior to this incident, also in Ga-Rankuwa, people wearing ANC t-shirts were seen throwing stones and other missiles at a gathering that was being addressed by DA Gauteng Premier candidate Musi Maimane to disrupt his Believe bus tour. It does not matter whether these people are ANC members or not. With their attire, they identified themselves with the ANCs. Many South Africans have died for the right to vote, and it will be a tragic irony if people wearing ANC apparel were to deny any citizen of this country the right to vote for the party of his or her choice. The DA calls on ANC President Jacob Zuma and ANC Gauteng Premier Nomvula Mkonyane to call upon those who wear their party's gear to desist from such undemocratic and violent behavior. The DA reiterates its appeal for peace, political maturity, and tolerance, and we urge the ANC to join us in this call. Thank you very much.
The ANC.
Honourable Speaker, the City of Johannesburg plans to spend around 2 billion rand over the next 3 years on rebuilding and upgrading road infrastructure. The business districts of Sandton and Rosebank will in particularly be pleased at the news that roads in their areas, not least the M1 and M2 motorways and other key arterial roads, will be a major focus of the renewal program. This announcement by Mayor Parks Tau is particularly welcome given the serious weekday peak hour gridlock that has taken hold of key areas north of the city as commercial development and redevelopment continues to outpace infrastructural maintenance and expansion. This investment will make a major contribution to the productivity in this economic heartland of our country. It is also encouraging that Mayor Tau singled out for special attention the perennial pothole problem of which Johannesburg will be spending almost 80 million rand on patching and fixing roads. By turning this problem around, Johannesburg will be restoring lost value to many individual streets and even entire suburbs.
Order,
that
members,
urgently
order,
need road
order.
maintenance and development. I thank you.
The UDM didn't make use of its opportunity to make a statement. The opportunity now goes to the ANC. The ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. The FCI World Agility Championships, involving some of the world's top show dogs, was held at the Coca-Cola Dome in Johannesburg from 11 to 13 October. This was the first time in the 18-year history of the championships that it was held outside of Europe, and the first time in South Africa. Participating in countries included South Africa, Germany, Spain, Switzerland, Austria, Norway, the USA, and the Czech Republic. The event was extremely well run and again demonstrated South Africa's ability to successfully host international competitions. The individual world champions crowned were from Switzerland, Spain, and Austria, while the team champions were from Germany and Switzerland. South Africa won 1 silver and 2 bronze medals in the team competition. Congratulations go to the organising committee, the volunteers, and the Kenyan Union of South Africa for putting together a competition of world-class standard. The ANC constituency office in Randburg was proud to have worked with the organisers to ensure a successful World Championships. The holding of this and the countless other international events in South Africa since 1994 continues to demonstrate the confidence the world has in South Africa and this African National Congress government. I thank you.
That concludes member statements. Are there any ministerial responses? Honourable Minister Manuel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me firstly respond to the Honourable Botha. I think he's no longer in the House, but I want to join with him and everybody else who condemns the behaviour of the thugs who looted shops and especially the stalls of informal traders in the city of Cape Town yesterday. Nobody should ever support that, and I think it's very important that all of us together as parliamentarians speak out in the interest of democracy against that. But I don't have the same to say for the Honourable...
Order, members, order.
I don't have the same views about what the Honourable Marcela raised, because he's also left the House. Oh, there he is, okay. He's got to make these outrageous statements because the DA is tolerating him in their ranks a little bit now. Let me just say to you, sir, Mr. Speaker, let me just say to the Honourable Marcela that
order, members, order.
The individuals concerned in this were raised by the leader of the DA, Ms. Helen Ziller, the other day, and she said that Lily and Kotla are probably EFF members. They've both been suspended from the ANC, so let's not pretend that they've done this in the name of the African National Congress. Let me also say.
Order, members, order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
There's no point of order. I'm responding to
Point of order. Firstly, the Honourable Minister says I'm being tolerated for being an unruly in the DA. That's nonsense. Secondly, he's refusing that these are ANC members,
There's no point
yet
of order.
they are still in the ANC.
Order. Honourable member, take your seat. Order, members, order.
Let me say to the Honourable Marcela that the numbers you raise on unemployment are outrageous. You may be entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts, and certainly not in an environment where the quarterly labour force survey was released the day before yesterday. The Western Cape has an unemployment rate of 23.4, Limpopo 17.8, KwaZulu-Natal 20.9. And even in those stats, the young people not in employment, education or training, the Western Cape has a higher NEET rate than even Limpopo. So I must say to you and the DA,
order, members.
Claim no easy victories, mask no difficulties, and tell no lies. Thank you very much.
Honourable Minister Kwele.
Thank you, Chairperson. Questions have been raised again about this protest in Cape Town. From onset, let's say, as the ANC government, we condemn violence during service delivery protests. Secondly, to state uncategorically that the protest was not organized by the ANC, but it was organized by suffering communities of this suburb of this city, which is neglected. Our analysis, Mr. Speaker, informs us that most of these protests start peacefully, but they soon degenerate into violence if those who are having complaints are ignored. Or, no, let me finish.
Order, honourable members, order.
It deteriorates to violence if the authorities ignore them or even sometimes refuse to engage them or listen to them. We call upon the DA to stop discrimination and act as a government and deliver the basic services to all communities of Kodan, including the poor. I thank you.
Order, honourable members, order. Minister Klingwan.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Van der Merwe, the fact that the Deputy Minister has been to universities and FETs clearly means that suphethe umcimbi. The fact that we are dealing with a legacy of 400 years does not mean, yes, in 20 years, we will have addressed the injustices of 48 years of apartheid and 300 years of colonialism. People with disabilities have been denied their rights. There have been no schools, particularly for people with disabilities who are black in this country. However, I want to say, since when did the IFP care for people with disabilities? Since when has the IFP or opposition cared about women? Uphi uzanele magwaza, uzimele kuba kwabashushu kwa IFP, kuba eyinkokhele ngumama, uyanithwaxa pha ezibhotini ngoku sithethayo. The fact of the matter is, IFP is bleeding to death.
There's a point of order. Yes, sir. You have the floor. You have the floor. Order, members, order. Proceed, sir.
Bengicela ukubuza la kumhlonishwa ukuthi ukhuluma ngani. Uyamazi lo muntu akhuluma ngaye.
Proceed.
Ngiyamazi umama owakhokhela iIFP wasatshwa wakhishelwa ngaphandle manje uyayithwaxa elaphana ngaphandle. Anyway, people with disabilities are saying nothing about us without us. Honorable Van der Merwe, where are your disabled people, MPs in this house? DA, where are your disabled MPs in this house? Thank you.
Point of order.
Yes, sir. You have the floor. Order, members. You have the floor.
Ngicela ukukhumbuza umhlonishwa kulokho akakushoyo. KwaZulu-Natal isikhona isikole sabakhubazekile enkandla. Ave kungukuthi iSouth Africa yonke aze benakelelwa abantu. Sasakhiwe yiIFP. Ngiyabonga.
We proceed. Thank you. Take your seat, Honourable Minister.
We are not talking about KwaZulu-Natal, we are talking about the whole country. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Take your seat, Honourable Member.
Point of order, Chair.
Honourable
Yes,
Speaker, Honourable Speaker.
Point of order.
Order. Don't speak until I recognize you.
Honourable Speaker,
Yes, proceed.
I take quite great offence to the fact that the minister has launched a personal attack on me and my party. I raised a legitimate concern about people who've been denied access to education at a university. It's not a matter to do with the IFP or the ANC. It's got to do with the lives of 3 people who have been denied education. I wasn't attacking the minister personally, and therefore she should not attack me or my
Order,
party
all members.
personally.
Order. Let the speaker
I was
be
raising
heard.
a legitimate concern. I wasn't saying it's the minister's fault.
You had your hand up, sir. Yes, please. Order. Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Well, Honourable Speaker, I wanted to correct the minister that they are definitely not referred to as people, as disabled people. It's people with disabilities.
Honourable Minister.
They call themselves Disabled People South Africa. Disabled People South Africa. The activists that went to the UN and wrote the convention. I want to say to the honorable member there, Honorable Vandameve, it is hot in the kitchen. And if you don't want to be in politics, in parliament, get out of the kitchen. I thank you, Honorable.
Order, order. And what point are you rising on, sir?
Honourable Speaker.
Order.
Honourable Speaker, it is against the rules for members of parliament to abuse process and raise frivolous points of order. And they should not be allowed.
Take your seat. Take your seat, honourable member. Deputy Minister Surti.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Lovemore for prefacing a statement with the realities of our past, where the enormous disparities in terms of what the black child would receive in comparison to the white child. And these are the realities that we grapple with in our democratic South Africa. Honourable Speaker, indeed our mantra in the past administration and this current administration is that there should be quality education. Whilst we can celebrate the reality that we've achieved universal education in primary school and much of our high school, the issues of quality education had to be confronted. What is it that government has indeed done? We recognize that education is a continuum that should start, as the NDP says, from preschool. Today we can celebrate the fact that more than 680,000 of our children, black and white, are in preschool in schools. Secondly, we can celebrate the fact that every child, white and black, receives resources in preschool in our public schools. Thirdly, we can celebrate the fact that we recognize the enormous challenge that we face as a country in terms of literacy and numeracy. And to this end, we have distributed more than 115 million books, workbooks, from grade 1 to grade 9 to promote literacy and numeracy. It's important that we set in place an appropriate foundation for learning so that we can directly improve on the quality of education. We can celebrate the fact as a government and as a ruling party that more than 10,000 educators are the beneficiaries of our Funza Lushaka scheme, which focuses on foundation-phase learning, which focuses on mathematics and science and the languages. We can celebrate the fact that for the first time in the history of this country, there is an integrated professional development program which has been supported by all teacher unions, and therefore we recognize the importance of content knowledge and pedagogy, and this is a process that is unfolding. Indeed, what we are doing, no other country in the world has done. We have recognized the importance of literacy and numeracy, and to that extent, 2 years ago, in fact 3 years ago, we tested more than 5.5 million of our children from grade 1 to grade 6 on literacy and numeracy, and we can tell you what the performance and achievement of every child is in every class, in every grade, in every school, in every district in the country. Last year we tested more than 7.2 million, and this year we've done so again. And the indications are that from year to year there is an improvement, and I'm cautiously optimistic that in terms of quality we will see a similar improvement this year.
Your time has expired.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you.
That concludes ministerial responses. Deputy Minister.
No, Speaker, in fact, let me say that I'm acting on behalf of a colleague, the Minister of Water and Environment. She's voiceless today, but she's asked me to inform the House that 3 water projects have been completed. The first, the Hlabisa bulk water supply. This is a project that will supply some 51,413 people in the Hlabisa area and 18,600 people in the Ezibayeni area. This project is completed and it's scheduled to be launched on the 30th of November 2013. Then the Mandlakazi bulk water scheme is a scheme that will benefit 27,000 people. It's scheduled to be launched in either December of this year or January next year. And then the Jozini Ingwavuma water supply project will benefit 134,864 people. That scheme has been completed, and the Minister is waiting to set a date for its launch. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes ministerial responses. Before I proceed with the first order of the day, I'd like to make a ruling. Order. Honourable members, during the decision of questions on the Lotteries Amendment Bill on Thursday, 24th of October 2013, various points of order were raised after Honourable S.V. Kalyan requested a division on behalf of the DA and left the chamber before voting commenced. On the day, I quoted Rule 18, which states that, I quote, "A member demanding a division shall not leave the chamber until the result of the division has been declared and shall vote with those who, in the opinion of the presiding officers, are in the minority," close quote. There is no room for misinterpretation here. Honourable Kalyan was indeed in breach of the rules, since Rule 88 compels her to remain in the chamber when she has demanded a division. Rule 69 determines that a member may, with the prior consent of the presiding officer, explain a matter of a personal nature. Honourable Kalyan has requested an opportunity to do so. Before granting her that opportunity, I shall briefly want to address a few issues that have had a disruptive effect on the ability of the House to fulfill its constitutional functions for passing legislation. The first is a quorum requirement created by the Constitution. The Constitution provides that a majority of Assembly members must be present before a vote on a bill may be taken. In other words, there must be at least 201 members in the House. The onus is on the House to ensure that it is correct for a vote. The House consists of all members from all parties. It follows, therefore, that the responsibility of ensuring that the requisite number of members are present to constitute a quorum does not rest entirely with members of the majority party. Constitutionally speaking, that responsibility rests with all members individually and collectively. When members are asked to record their presence to establish whether there is a quorum present and they refrain from doing so, it can be construed as an attempt to frustrate the work of the House. As honourable members and public representatives, it would not be appropriate for members to conduct themselves in that manner. Members must therefore record their presence when requested to do so by the presiding officer. The second issue is that of committee meetings during the sittings of the House. Once again, a number of points of order were raised and numerous arguments offered after Honourable Kalyan explained that some members of the DA had left the chamber before the vote to attend committee meetings. Though some committees have particularly heavy legislative workload and may have to meet during sittings, permission for such meetings is given with the express understanding that when the bells are rung to summon members to the House for a vote, proceedings must be suspended immediately and members must make their way to the chamber. That was explained on Thursday by the Honorable House Chairperson, C.T. Frolick. Requiring members to be present in the House for a vote does not constrain them when it comes to expressing their support for or opposition to a piece of legislation. Members are free to vote for or against a bill, or even to abstain should they wish to do so. The rules are clear, however, that all members in the House, when the question is put, must vote. That covers all points raised by members in regard to the division on the Lotteries Amendment Bill. I appeal to the honourable members to keep in mind that we are taking decisions on behalf of the people we represent, and therefore a vote, whether on a bill or any other measure, should be approached with thought and circumspection. I now give the Honourable Kalyan the opportunity for a personal explanation. The Honourable Kalyan, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to offer a personal explanation in terms of Rule 69. On Thursday, the 24th of October 2013, I requested a division on the Lotteries Amendment Bill on behalf of the Democratic Alliance. When the bells started ringing, a number of our members left the chamber. I was aware that some members were due to attend committee meetings that afternoon, so I assumed that they were leaving for that purpose. I did not offer...
Order, honourable members, order. Proceed.
I did not offer the explanation with the purpose of misleading the House. The Portfolio Committee on Police was sitting in a committee room just outside the chamber, G26, so I thought I had enough time to confirm my explanation while the bells were ringing. However, I got caught outside when the doors were closed for the vote. I transgressed the rules by leaving the chamber after asking for the division, and I regret that greatly. I would like to assure the House that I hold its proceedings in high esteem. As a senior party whip, I am also fully aware of my added responsibility to contribute to maintaining good order in the House. Once again, I humbly apologize and undertake to always conduct my interaction in the House in terms of the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. That concludes the discussion on this matter. We now proceed. The Secretary will read the first order of the day. The Secretary.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Finance on 2013 revised fiscal framework.
The Honourable Chair Mufamadi.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, distinguished guests, on the 23rd of October 2013, the Minister of Finance tabled the medium-term budget policy statement. My task today is to present the analysis of the revised fiscal policy framework after the Standing Committee on Finance concluded its public hearings on the proposed medium-term budget policy statement, revised. Honorable Speaker, fiscal path over the last 19 years has proven to be credible, reliable, predictable. As such, it has always served as a basis to assure millions of South Africans that the South Africa of tomorrow will always be better than the South Africa of yesterday, and ignite new confidence in the investor community, as it was demonstrated during the course of the committee's interactions
with various stakeholders during our public hearings. Honorable Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity and invite all of you, honorable members, to congratulate our Minister of Finance, Honorable Pravin Gordhan, for being named by Emerging Markets as the 2013 Minister for Sub-Saharan Africa. This is not new, it's not something that should surprise us, honorable members. Since 2006, Open Budget Index Performance Initiative has always rated South Africa to be amongst the top 5 in the area of budget transparency and openness. In 2008, we were rated number 2. In 2010, we were rated number 1. And in 2012, we were rated number 2. We are and shall continue to be a good example to many, both in the developed and emerging economies. Honorable Ministers, this is part of the narrative we are not telling, which we should tell, to continue to inspire confidence locally and internationally and sustain the investor confidence we so much need under these global difficult conditions. Indeed, since the advent of democracy, the ANC and its government has ensured that fiscal stability and sustainability remains the bedrock of our economic foundation to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth, to create jobs, eliminate poverty and inequalities. Minister, you have consistently raised concern about the kind of a narrative, the kind of a story we send or we tell about ourselves, both as individuals and organizations, domestically and internationally. Let me bring this to your attention, which you might be aware of, that only yesterday, Business Day reported that the CEO of one of South Africa's largest gold mining company, Neil Froneman, said the following: "The government seems to despise the industry." I quote. He further went on to say, government had to create the right platform for the mining industry, whether they like it or not. They have to create the right platform at the moment. We need a supportive government. Organized labor needs to take a long-term view, and we all need to look at the long-term benefit rather than short-term agendas. Honorable members, the point I am making here is that whilst it is correct for the industry to raise their expectations, equally, we expect them to spell out their own obligations to both government, labor, and in particular, the communities in which they conduct their mining activities. In his own assertion, the CEO only expects the resolution or the solution to come from government and labor. And in that regard, the industry has got no role to play in creating a conducive working and productive environment between the employees and the employers. That, in his view, government should remain central in resolving labor relation industrial actions. Honorable Speaker, honorable members, domestically, we have made huge social and economic advances that few other countries have been able to achieve in less than 20 years of democracy. Certainly, we still face challenges, but it is in the quality of our leadership provided by an ANC government that the answer to the economic challenges we face today are to be found. Today we can say without a tinge of arrogance or fear of contradicting ourselves that the counter-cyclical fiscal path is responding to the challenges of the poor and the needs of our general population. The counter-cyclical fiscal path or policy has responded positively and continues to reaffirm the principles of long-term sustainability and fiscal consolidation to support inclusive economic growth and ensure service delivery. Over the medium term,
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
the revised fiscal framework will ensure that government is able to do the following: meet the 2013 fiscal deficit target of 4.2%. Honourable Speaker, the ANC support this revised fiscal framework, and the committee so it does. Thank you.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, the Honourable Chief Whip.
Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
There are no objections, Speaker, but the Democratic Alliance requests an opportunity for a declaration.
Thank you very much. That's noted. No objections agreed to, but there will be an opportunity for a declaration. Would you like to make the declaration now, sir? Please proceed.
Honourable Speaker, thank you. Last week, the Minister told us that the news flow is what's damaging South Africa. I'm afraid, Honourable Minister, it's government policies that are. In 2011, your Treasury forecast that South Africa's growth would be 4.4%. Actually, this year, it's 2%. It's because this government's got an inability to introduce a single plan for the economy. This means that our fastest growing budget item over the medium term is interest payments. It will increase to 9.7% per year for the next 3 years. By 2016, the year before debt's meant to stabilize, we will be spending 140 billion rand a year servicing our 2 trillion rand debt. This is more than we will spend on healthcare in that year. Now, the problem, Honourable Speaker, is that achieving the stabilization of debt in 2017 depends on the Minister's forecast of 3.5% becoming a reality for 2017. The question is, if the Minister was so wrong 3 years ago in his growth forecast, how can we believe that this forecast is right, especially considering that this budget did not introduce any new measures from the NDP for implementation? This year, the Minister had to spend the entire 4 billion rand contingency reserve and rely on 3.5 billion rands worth of underspending by government's departments without the capacity to spend the money they were given. He also had to recalibrate the budget deficit, so now we can sell state-owned entities in order to make the budget balance. The point is, if the Minister does not introduce real reforms to drive growth higher, he will run out of these tricks to reach his budget deficit targets, and our mounting government debt will become a serious problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that Cope would also like to make a declaration. Cope.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have concluded this report yesterday and we all approved it. We shall debate the budget framework next week, but the renewal emphasis placed on the National Development Plan is yet again welcomed. Only time will tell whether we have done enough to keep the credit rate agencies away from our door. All eyes will now be on implementation that has been pledged. Zambia, with a growth rate of 7%, has just been downgraded. We are still borrowing to fund social grants and to pay a huge state wage bill. More of a third of our debt is held by foreigners. So it is important to remain focused. COPE will support the Finance Minister to remain focused and to take care of our economy.
Thank you very much. The report has been agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order of the day. The Secretary will read the order of the day. How many secretaries do we have?
Second reading debate, Financial Services Laws General Amendment Bill.
Yes, sir.
So, Speaker, our member wanted to make a declaration.
Oh, you want to make a declaration?
Yes, sir.
Please, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, this revised fiscal framework reaffirms to the nation that the counter-cyclical fiscal policy of the ANC-led government is the most appropriate policy to address the economic challenges we face. It is precisely this fiscal policy adopted in advance of the international economic crisis that has enabled the country to economically come through this period with relatively less uncertainty than most countries. This approach in managing the fiscus has enabled us to maintain infrastructure spending and drive industrialization of the economy despite the sluggish growth in the economy and relative inflationary pressure. This revised fiscal framework, therefore, grounds itself in the continued fiscal consolidation and support for the economy. Further, it recognizes the risk of servicing debt cost and continue to establish economic path of creating great debt sustainability. This, the ANC government is doing as a policy position, and we are not doing that. We have noted with concern that the political party with no logical economic policy, DA, agree with us. Let's be reminded, you are even worse because at stage you go to the extreme of claiming our own policies. They are not the creators of this idea. It belongs to the ANC. To the contrary, Honorable Speaker, the fact that we are calling for regulatory impact assessments confirms the ANC long-held view that there are unnecessary administrative costs within our economy, and this should be reviewed. This does not suggest, as some who want everyone to believe, that regulation of the economy should be relaxed. To the contrary, in achieving the nature and character of growth, we are seeking further strategic regulation by the state of the economy. This is necessary, given we are a developmental state and have a program in the National Development Plan that must be achieved. This will not spontaneously happen. It has to be driven. It has to be driven by us, Honorable Speaker. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, the ANC government continues to manage our economy in a manner that best addresses the current conjuncture. The ANC calls for the adoption of this report. I thank you.
Any other parties wishing to make a declaration? That doesn't appear to be the case. Thank you very much. The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Second reading debate, Financial Services Laws General Amendment Bill.
I now... Yes.
May I address you on a point of order?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to address you on a point of order in terms of Rule 97B to move for the postponement of an order of the day as determined by Rule 97C. So, Speaker, I therefore move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House postpones the second order of the day, the second reading of the Financial Services Laws General Amendment Bill, Bill B29B of 2012, in view of the fact that due process was not followed to facilitate a second reading debate. I so move.
Thank you. Honourable members, a motion has now been moved by the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Ordinarily, a motion without notice requires the unanimous concurrence of all members present in order for it to be moved. However, Rule 97 makes an exception for a motion for the postponement or discharge of or giving precedence to an order of the day or referring a bill to a committee. For that reason, the motion has to be put to the House for a decision. I now put the motions. Are there any objections to the adoption of the report? No objection. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. And those against will say no.
Speaker, when you put the question, there was no objection.
Okay, so
And there still is no objection.
Okay.
Honourable Speaker, we object.
Order, honourable members. So there is no objection. So the report has been adopted. Right. We are on the motion that has been moved by the DA, and the ANC says no to the motion. Okay. Again, let me put it in case there's lack of clarity. I now put the motion.
We object to the motion.
Those in favor say aye. And those who object, those who will, can I hear the noes? Those. I think the noes have it. If parties want the objections recorded, we will record the objections.
Speaker,
Yes, ma'am.
the Democratic Alliance calls for the division, and I promise to stay in the House.
A division has been called for. The bells will rung for 5 minutes. Order. Will members please take their seats, allocated seats? All members, please take your seats. A division having been called, the bells have been rung, and now we're beginning the process of voting. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as a member's vote when the voting session is closed by the chair. Order. The question before the House is the motion moved by the Chief Whip of the opposition, Chief Whip of the DA, agreed to. I'll repeat that. The question before the House is a motion moved by the Chief Whip of the opposition that it be agreed to. Are all members in their allocated seats? Yes. Voting will now commence. Order, members. Those in favor of the motion should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Yep. Thank you. The voting session is now closed. Okay, here are the results. The yes votes are 54. The no votes are 183. There are no abstentions. The motion is therefore not agreed to. Yes, ma'am.
Speaker, can the Democratic Alliance's objection to this be noted, please?
Objection to the vote. Thank you very much. You can't object to the vote. The vote has taken place.
We're objecting to the outcome of the vote.
The vote. It's democracy. You can't object to a democratic process. Order on members. Order, 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 order. Okay. Order, order on members. Order, order. We proceed with the point where Honorable Van Rooyen was going to speak on the bill. Honourable member, you have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Democracy has prevailed. The masses have spoken through their duly elected representative. We are not shocked by these tendencies emerging on the eve of elections. Weird tendencies emerging. People are objecting even to democracy itself. Honorable Speaker, the Financial Services Laws General Amendment Bill makes the financial sector safe by strengthening the regulatory powers of the Financial Services Board. The bill is in line with international practices, which enhances the quality of supervision. Honorable Speaker, indeed, after the 2008 global financial crisis, G20, IMF, Financial Stability Board, and all the international regulatory associations
All members, order. Allow the speaker to be heard.
have shifted to a more intensive, intrusive approach to regulating the financial sector. In our own South African term, we call this approach draconian and krachtrachter. The bill aims to align non-banking financial sector legislation with the international standards adopted by the cited international institution. As policymakers and regulators, we are faced with the challenges of driving forward regulatory reforms, taking in lessons from the past and current experiences. We recognize the need to enhance the effectiveness of financial sector regulation and the ability of regulators to respond swiftly and decisively to risks to the stability of the financial system. At the same time, Honorable Speaker and members, the regulatory framework must ensure appropriate accountability of regulators. The bill updates our approach to regulating the financial sector and is an important interim step towards the envisaged implementation of the Twin Peaks regulatory framework. The bill addresses gaps identified by the Financial Sector Assessment Program conducted by the IMF and the World Bank regarding South Africa's adherence to international standards for financial regulation. Inter alia, it provides for enhanced supervisory powers by establishing the FSP as the lead regulator where there is concurrent jurisdiction in respect of the same entities. And it clarified the status of FSP legislation in relation to other legislation. The bill proposes a consequential amendment to the definition of a medical scheme in the Medical Schemes Act to facilitate the appropriate demarcation between health insurance products and medical schemes. Contrary to some misplaced and bizarre argument, in no way does the bill seek to tamper with the appropriateness of its nor the Medical Scheme Act taking. Honorable Speaker, allow me to pass my sincere words of gratitude to members of the Standing Committee on Finance for their hard work in scrutinizing the bill. Their wisdom and insight has ensured that the bill before the House keeps South Africa's non-banking financial sector regulatory framework up to the best in the world. Thank you, Minister, and your National Treasury team for prompt and succinct responses to concerns and queries that emerged during the process. I humbly submit to the House, Honorable Speaker, the Financial Services Law General Amendment Bill for its support. Ke a leboga, baya danki.
The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Financial Services Laws General Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
may we make a declaration, please?
You may indeed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. But what a blow for democracy. The ANC uses its majority to shut down a debate on a bill. I certainly join the Honourable Kalyan in objecting. Because, Speaker, the fact that this is a statement rather than a debate sets a distressing precedent. The committee had no consensus that it should be a statement because the DA consistently requested a debate, which we were within our right to do. If this is the way,
Order on members, order.
This is the way Parliament conducts itself, there's nothing stopping the ANC using their majority on any bill to block a debate. I sincerely hope that this does not set a precedent. Because this bill, Honourable Speaker, is deeply technical, but it's also very political. Here, Treasury gives regulators draconian powers that are excessively harsh and severe. And importantly, it doesn't balance these powers with increased accountability. When it comes to financial regulation, National Treasury consistently overreaches. They introduce draconian rather than appropriate measures. They give additional powers to the regulators at the expense of civil liberties. And they use direct intervention as a tool for regulation when competition would clearly work much more effectively. This fundamentally threatens the financial sector, the largest contributor to our GDP, the goose that lays the golden egg. Now, during the committee process, we managed to get Treasury to agree to file off a few of the nastiest edges of the bill, but serious problems remain. On the limitation of liability, this bill allows the FSB officials to act in a way that is grossly negligent. It sets the bar of accountability far too low. It means, in effect, that FSB officials will be able to act in a seriously careless way and not be held liable for their actions. Surely we cannot have regulators behaving in such a way. Secondly, it defines the concept of policyholder protection provisions, which we accept, but they should be published by the minister, not the regulator. They should be of general application, and Parliament should have oversight of them. None of these conditions are met in the bill. Thirdly and fourthly, there are problems with delegated functions and major question marks over this factor, and problems with the tagging of the bill. It deals with health services, defined in Schedule 4 of the Constitution as a provincial competency. Surely this should be a Section 76 bill. Not only are there problems with Treasury's overreach, there are problems with the tagging of the bill too. Now, the DA put all of these arguments forward in committee. Each one was systematically voted down by the ANC without considering them. This is why the DA does not support this bill. And I hope this Parliament never again sees a day when the ANC's majority shuts down the Parliament's right to a full debate. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Cope.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. When this 280-page bill landed on our desk earlier this year, I knew it was going to be a technical one. After it was advertised for comments, it was formally sent to the committee, comprising of 116 pages of proposed amendments to 11 different laws. One was really getting a feeling in the committee about the extent of legislation financial institutions and its fraternity must comply with. According to Professor Robert Vivian of Wits, and I quote him, even persons working in the industry wanted to grasp the impact of this massive legislation, they would simply not be able to do so. The public comment period was extended twice. Many of the amendments flow from the policy paper, A Safer Financial Sector to Serve South Africa Better. And we can expect to see more in a shift towards the Twin Peaks model of financial regulations. The primary objective of the bill is to ensure our financial services industry will be better and to address any further potential risk to our system. We have to be able to move fast in this environment and therefore slightly more regulatory powers. The Financial Services Board has been criticized in the past to be too slow. There are no excuses now. More than 250 amendments were added by the committee. I want to thank the Treasury and all officials who assisted the committee. The DA had the chance to file a minority report. We have not seen that report.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now put the question again. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time?
Sorry, Honourable Speaker. We have our own declaration to make.
Oh.
Thank you.
I didn't see it here. ANC?
Agbare young speaker, die ANC-regering bevorder stabiliteit in finansiële markte, ten einde groei en ontwikkeling te bevorder, waar sonder buitelandse direkte beleggings vir werkskepping nie kan plaasvind nie. Dat die ANC-regering daarin slag om stabiliteit te skep, word algemeen deur internasionale organisasies erken. In die geval van hierdie wetsontwerp onder bespreking, gee toepaslike wetgewing soos deur die nasionale tesourie voorgeskryf en toegepas, uitvoering aan Suid-Afrika se G20 verpligtinge ten opsigte van die versterking van die stryd teen finansiële markmisbruik en manipulasie. Wysigings aan die onderhavige wette is ook nodig om gapings in die finansiële sektor se regulatoriese raamwerk aan te spreek en te verstewig. Die gapings is geïdentifiseer deur die IMF, Wêreldbank se finansiële sektorevaluering van Suid-Afrika se nakoming van internasionale regulatoriese praktyke ten opsigte van die regulering van die bank- en versekeringswese. Die wet op mediese skemas in sy huidige formaat het 'n invloed op die finansiële dienste sektor waar doeltreffende finansiële toesig nodig is. Doeltreffende toesig wat slegs deur die Raad op Finansiële Dienste uitgevoer kan word en dis vereis dat die wetgewing na artikel 75 geklassifiseer moet word. Die misplaaste logika van die DA is gebaseer op die foutiewe benadering dat mediese hulpskemas met gesondheid verband hou en gesondheid daarom 'n konkurrente funksie is wat dan sou vereis dat die wetsontwerp as artikel 76 geklassifiseer moet word. Tydens die openbare verhore het die Raad op mediese skemas genoem dat die DA se voorlegging in hierdie verband glad nie sin maak nie, aangesien mediese skemas nie provinsiaal gebaseer is nie en daar dus afgelei word dat die DA mediese skemas wil desentraliseer. Hierdie saak is eers op die laaste oomblik deur die DA te berde gebring, toe die staande komitee op die punt was om die wetsontwerp af te teken. Mens kan maar net raai wat die bedenklike motief agter hierdie onlogiese obstruktiewe optrede is. Die DA gryp na grashalms in 'n patetiese poging om die regerende party in die aanloop tot die verkiesing in 'n swak lig te stel. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I put the question again. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections.
I call for the division.
A division having been called. A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
Maria's not intervening. No, this is Maria's doing that. This is now in the break here. We're saying that what Maria was not supposed to see Charles was from class.
That this is a
Order. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing a correct button. If a member presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button press will be recorded as the member's vote when voting session is closed by the chair. The question before the House is that Financial Service Law General Amendment Bill be read a second time. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now start. Those in favor of the bill being read a second time should press yes button. Those against should press no button. Those wishing to abstain should press abstain button. Have all members voted? The voting session is now closed. Okay. The result of the division is as followed. Yes votes 185, no vote 38. The question is accordingly agreed to, and the Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Financial Services Law General Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Finance on Employment Tax Incentive Bill.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the bill be read for the second time. Bill be adopted. Because if it can be read for the second time.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
First reading debate, Employment Tax Incentive Bill.
Honorable members, before we proceed with the first reading debate on the Employment Tax Incentive Bill, I have to inform you that the Speaker received an amendment to the bill from the Minister of Finance. The amendment is printed in the name of the Minister on page 661 of today's order paper. The amendment is meant to effect the technical correction to the bill in terms of Section 14 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, number 9 of 2009, by omitting 221 and substituting it with 211 in line 44 on page 5 of the bill. The amendment will be put at the end of the first reading debate on the bill. We now proceed with the first reading debate on the bill. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker and honorable members. As we deliberate the legislation before this House today, thousands of young and old work seekers are sending their CVs to potential employers. They're queuing at business premises, they are answering advertisements for vacancies, or asking friends and family members about job opportunities at their places of work. Just Tuesday this week, the quarterly labor force survey results for the third quarter this year were released, which show that approximately 3.3 million of the 10.4 million youth aged between 15 and 24 years were not in employment, they were not in education and training. The ANC in 2009 elections manifesto identified 5 priority areas with job creation as the key to sustainable livelihoods and economic development. And I quote, "We said these priorities will be tackled with all means at our disposal. The resources of government, the vision of the Freedom Charter, and the energy and commitment of our people. Our priorities will specifically target the needs of the youth, women, workers, the rural poor, the elderly, and the people with disabilities," close quote. To this effect, government provides a number of incentives geared towards increasing investment, enhancing competitiveness and productivity, supporting employment creation, encouraging on-the-job training, enhancing skills capacity, and addressing climate change challenges. And a number of these incentives are in operation already. The employment tax incentive is one aspect of the ANC's government's holistic program of action on unemployment. Other aspects include the expanded public works program and community works program, skills development through universities, FET colleges and SETAs, the various programs that flow from the Industrial Policy Action Plan, the Jobs Fund and small business support. Government has also a particular focus on youth unemployment, and the programs that fall under the Youth Employment Accord address other factors that cause youth unemployment. Deputy Speaker, we cannot succeed in any effort to improve the lives of South Africans if our economy doesn't utilize the talents, the energy, insights, and efforts of all its people that are willing to work, including young, inexperienced workers. Young work seekers are particularly vulnerable to unemployment because they don't have a proven track record to indicate their productivity to potential employers. Also, long spells of unemployment early in life reduce the chances of eventual employment and the level of future income. We view the introduction of this incentive as a critical intervention because young workers, the future of our economy, are currently not gaining work experience, which will form the basis of future performance. The employment tax incentive proposed in this bill can make a significant contribution in the fight against youth unemployment. It will also do so by sharing the cost of employment of young work seekers between employers and government. Government will also reimburse employers up to 50% or 1,000 rands per eligible worker to stimulate employment. This presents a good business case for employers to expand employment by hiring a worker that would previously have been overlooked. In the past, most of our incentives for businesses targeted investment, which meant that capital-intensive industries received most benefits. This incentive specifically targets the hiring of vulnerable group of workers, of work seekers, which will result in higher labor intensivity of production. This is also the reason for extending the incentive to special economic zones and other designated industries, but without the age criteria in these areas. Finally, this is an incentive that can help small and medium-sized businesses most because they are engines of employment growth and the design is intentionally simple. Through the public comments process, we received submissions from companies that indicated that they are ready to employ young workers due to the availability of this incentive, and we will hold them to that. This mechanism will operate by lowering employers' tax liability, which arises through the pay-as-you-earn system, which means that at the end of each month, an employer will subtract the value of the incentive from the PAYE contributions it withheld on behalf of SARS. Employers that do not have a high enough PAYE liability to offset the full incentive will be allowed to roll the unclaimed amounts over the next month. And SARS is developing a cash reimbursement mechanism for companies that have no pay-as-you-earn. The intention, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that the incentive be implemented from the 1st of January to allow new school leavers to also benefit from the better chance to find employment. This proposal has been in the public domain for 2.5 years, and all practicable suggestions for changes to the incentive have been taken into account as we implement this incentive. We will learn of ways to improve the design even more as we implement, especially since this incentive will be closely monitored and evaluated. Circumstances in the economy may change, which necessitates adjustments to the incentive. This always is the case in policy implementation. What we have in front of us, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the best possible solution to the problem that we face, but not the panacea, given the information that we have available to understand the problem of youth unemployment. Now is the time to implement this solution, and there isn't a better time to do it than now. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable Mufumadi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, honorable members. Let me just start by restating the point that has been made on a numerous occasion. What are the objectives of this bill? The bill aims to improve employment prospects for young workers over the medium term by giving them experience. Government would like to share initial costs of hiring young people to boost job creation with the employers. Work experience gained will improve long-term employment prospects. We need to incentivize employment in the special economic zones and designated industries by the Minister of Finance. Those employed under this labor law or tax incentives will enjoy protections under the labor law equally as those who remain and who are currently employed. Honorable Speaker, the Employment Tax Incentive Bill gives impetus to the announcement made by the President in his 2010 State of the Nation address, I think it's 2011, that government will subsidize the cost of hiring young workers. The National in 2011, National Treasury developed a policy document for discussion and to give further clarity on the state of the nation, as the President pronounced. That policy document, called Youth Subsidy Policy Options for South Africa, was the culmination of the research program that had looked into and analyzed global options in addressing youth unemployment. And up to today, it remains the most comprehensive document on the subject. The issue of youth unemployment is rife in South Africa. It's not a slogan. We can't say, like status say, on Tuesday released the numbers of the 10.4 million unemployed young people, 3.1 of them, of the 10.4 million, 3.1 of those are young people that have got no job experience, are not in school, are not in training. Therefore, it can be that we end with the highest numbers of unemployed people in South Africa remain young people, and we stop there. We have to do something. The issue of youth unemployment is rife in South Africa. It affects all of us, but specifically, it has a psychological and debilitating effect on our young people. Now, let me remind honorable members in particular, those on my left, particularly Honorable Harris, who serves in our committee, that the issue of youth unemployment is not something that the ANC is raising today because it has become fashionable to talk about it. Let me remind you, of course, if you read, and I think as you take most of our policies, you would have actually even read the resolutions of the ANC from Polokwane. The 52nd National Conference of the African National Congress in Polokwane noted that the vast majority of the unemployed are black youth and women, many of whom have never held full-time employment and who lack the skills to gain entry into fast-growing sectors of the economy. Our key challenge is to address the mismatch between the supply of largely unskilled and semi-skilled labor that our history has bequeathed on us, and the demand for skilled labor that the economy is now generating. This requires direct intervention such as employment tax incentives. This is the ANC in 2007, not now. Furthermore, our conference noted that programs for the youth should seek primarily to give them training and experience to access formal employment in formal economy. Therefore, the ANC said, we seek to develop a multi-pronged strategy to tackle youth unemployment, as the creation of decent work is one of the priorities of the ANC and its government. Now, what I simply want to drive, honorable members, is that this is a program that is not starting today. It's a program that branches of the ANC, the vast majority of our people, have spoken into and make sure that we implement at the end of the day. The Employment Tax Incentive Bill complements existing government programs, such as Expanded Public Works Program, the Community Works Program, the Skills Development at College and Further Education and Training Issues, the Sector Education and Training Authority SETAS Program, and the National Skills Fund. This bill seeks to complement the initiatives that the government has already started. What are the key issues which were raised during the public hearings? One is the issue of the NEDLAC process. One of the things that I want to make sure is that the NEDLAC process had the opportunity to interact with the original concept as proposed by the Minister of Finance in 2011. Out of that process, further amendments were made into that proposal. One of those, or few of those shifts or amendments were around the shift of the draft bill from the subsidy to tax incentives. If you remember earlier on, we spoke about youth wage subsidy. Out of the NEDLAC process and consultation, there was a shift that seeks to emphasize on tax incentive for youth employment. We also changed the criteria in terms of age limits, minimum wage requirements, possibility of displacement of workers, and therefore the penalties that must go with the proposed bill or interventions. Also the inclusion of seasonal and part-time workers, how do we deal with them? All these things are a product of a thorough consultative process at the NEDLAC process. I'm raising this because all of a sudden the DA has found it very, very convenient to speak on behalf of NUMSA. I'm not sure what is the commonality between them and NUMSA, but I'm certain NUMSA remain an affiliate of COSATU and it espouses the positions of COSATU. Now, in terms of the displacement and substitution of workers, one of the things that we managed to come across and clarified in the public hearings by National Treasury as raised by various stakeholders was that the current bill on its own has sufficient internal mechanisms to deal with abuse of the tax incentives. The issue of downward pressure in wages also has been looked into to deal with the possibility of exploitation. But also one of the key areas that we realized, which is less emphasized in the deliberations of this particular bill, is that the focus is around youth wage or youth tax incentives, but very less emphasis in terms of its impact on the special economic zones, because that is one area that we need to focus on to industrialize our country and make sure that the manufacturing sector is actually propelled and begin to respond to the issues of balance of payment deficits. Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me say, after these serious deliberations, the committee has finally agreed that the bill should be presented before this House for consideration and should pass the bill so that implementation can happen as soon as yesterday. I therefore want to put forward on behalf of the committee and say the ANC support the employment tax incentive bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mufamadi. Honorable Harris.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. It goes without saying that unemployment is our most pressing crisis. I'm sorry the Honourable Manuel isn't here because he would have us believe that Limpopo province has the lowest unemployment rate in the country. This is absurd. The plain truth is that hopelessness is so entrenched in that province that for every person looking for work, there are 2 people that have given up looking. When these hopeless people are included in the unemployment measure, you can see the truth, that unemployment out of the provinces is second highest in Limpopo. You can also see that the Western Cape is the province of hope, with by far the lowest level of unemployment and hopelessness. This is what I mean. The Gauteng labour force is twice the size of the Western Cape's. But there are 10 times more job seekers who have given up looking for work in Gauteng than there are in the Western Cape. Stats SA's latest figures show that unemployment increased from 29 to 30% in Gauteng, while it decreased from 27 to 25% in the Western Cape. But, Honourable Deputy Speaker, this is a good day for young unemployed South Africans across the country. Because 3 years, 8 months and 21 days ago, the President stood at this podium and announced a youth wage subsidy, an intervention to help reduce the cost of hiring young people who make up 70% of the unemployed. The policy document that Treasury published estimated that 423,000 young people would benefit over 3 years. The policy was supported by economists, trade unions, and all of the parties in this House. Unfortunately, while it had this broad support, COSATU opposed it and refused to debate it at NEDLAC. So the policy remained stuck at NEDLAC for 3 years. Whilst it was stuck at NEDLAC, 218,000 young job seekers joined the ranks of the unemployed. That's the price of COSATU's delay. Now, of course, the DA did not take this lying down. We were convinced that a youth wage subsidy could help thousands of young South Africans get much-needed work experience. So in May 2012, we led a march of 3,000 young people to COSATU's head office to stand up to the Trade Union Federation and protest their opposition to the policy. And in the province of the Western Cape, we moved quickly to pilot a youth wage subsidy in this province. Despite our very limited budget for such interventions, we've so far subsidized 4,000 young people, and there's no evidence that a single one of them has displaced an existing worker. I must take this moment to thank the Development Bank of South Africa for their contribution of 67 million rand from the Jobs Fund to help us expand this scheme. Now, obviously frustrated with this filibustering from COSATU, Treasury simply tabled a bill to implement a youth wage subsidy at Parliament earlier this year. This is not a good thing for NEDLAC. According to Section 5 of the NEDLAC Act, it's meant to consider all significant changes to social and economic policy before they are implemented or introduced in Parliament. Now, normally, when NEDLAC has attempted to reach consensus, they publish a report, and that clears the way for policy to be legislated. But here, Treasury simply sidestepped NEDLAC. They brought a bill straight to Parliament. Is this the final nail in the coffin for NEDLAC? It's an important institution. It's meant to work towards consensus between business, labour, government and civil society. But it's now fundamentally compromised by the crippling divisions within the tripartite alliance. So this is a bad day for NEDLAC, Honourable Deputy Speaker, but it's a good day for young people. That said, it could have been a much, much better day, because the version of the subsidy before this House is significantly watered down from the version tabled in the 2011 policy. It provides a weaker incentive, and it supports only half the number of young workers the original version would have. In fact, if this version works as it's predicted to over the 3 years, it will only be able to absorb those young workers who have joined the labour force while the bill has been delayed at NEDLAC. So net job creation would in effect be zero. You can also see that the bill's been watered down in the cost to the fiscus. The first version would have cost 5 billion rand over 3 years. This version will cost somewhere between 1.3 and 3 billion. This is because key changes have been made to the incentive. Existing young workers will no longer be subsidized. If you're worried about substitution, those are the people you should be most worried about. Some new jobs created for entry-level and part-time workers in sectors without wage determinations will no longer be subsidized. So some of the most vulnerable people looking for work will not be eligible for the subsidy. The mechanism to allow a cash payout for firms unable to claim their tax back because of the limits in the size of their tax bill has been suspended. A sunset clause has been inserted, which halfway through the next term of Parliament triggers a self-destruct of the bill, taking away Parliament's power to decide on the continued existence of the bill. And now the Minister is able to introduce all sorts of conditions that beneficiaries would need in order to be eligible for the subsidy. But Treasury's own policy document claimed that such conditions would discourage take-up of the subsidy and reduce the number of unemployed young people gaining vital work experience. Why would we want to do that? We proposed fixes for all of these problems in committee as the Democratic Alliance, and every single one was outvoted by the ANC in committee. It's important to note that they were with the DA for a while on the proposal to remove the sunset clause, until our legal advisor pointed out that this would delay the bill. Suddenly the ANC members had a change of heart and decided that they could live with a sunset clause. This is lawmaking at its most expedient. But, Honourable Deputy Speaker, after 3 years of delays caused by an ideological standoff in the tripartite alliance, young South Africans are finally getting their youth wage subsidy. And we will be supporting the eventual introduction of it. Not because it's a silver bullet for unemployment, but because it represents some much-needed hope for young unemployed South Africans. We strongly condemn, however, the way it's been watered down to the detriment of hundreds of thousands of young people. Deputy Speaker, it will be interesting to see if the more than 30 members of COSATU on this side of the House object, considering that their federation told the Finance Committee that they committed to resisting the passing and implementation of the bill. Or what the members of the SACP will do, considering that the Honourable Manamela rejected the bill and said that he's firmly opposed to it. Perhaps that's why he's hiding in his office. Or if Minister Bapela will object, considering that he told this House that the money for the youth wage subsidy will now be funding the Youth Employment Accord, which deliberately doesn't mention the youth wage subsidy. Perhaps the Honourable Minister is hiding with Honourable Manamela. Because, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the real choice today is not between a youth wage subsidy or something else. It's a choice that South Africans will make at the ballot box next year, when they choose between the ANC, a party that holds up hundreds of thousands of jobs for young people, or the DA, a party that does what it says it will and puts young unemployed South Africans first?
Thank you, Honorable Harris. Honorable Kono.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I can say the Honourable Jeremy Cronin is here to stand in for all his colleagues who is hiding somewhere else, so the Honourable Harris can relax. Jill Marcus warned us last week that the effects of South Africa's high unemployment will be felt for decades. The Youth Unemployment Index, a recently launched study, has warned that growing unemployment among South Africa's youth is an issue that has far-reaching social and economical consequences for the nation. The index is echoed by findings of the study of the Development Bank, which warned that South Africa could not sustain the pattern of youth unemployment that has characterized the democratic period. And further, neither can young people continue to leave the formal education system with no hope of attaining an income, dignity, and self-worth through employment. Joblessness is the most pressing economic issue facing us and the world today. The NDP has warned that youth unemployment could become a major source of destabilization. There is no uniqueness to the South African problem. What is making it a challenge is when COSATU is shooting down an initiative like this bill. Our young unemployment stands at almost 5 million. 122,000 people joined these ranks between the first and second quarter of 2013. COSATU's Patrick Craven does not like the unemployed figures and said they will campaign for the implementation of policies such as the Industrial Policy Action Plan, the Infrastructure Development Program, and at least some of the new growth plan. But he's silent on the NDP, and COSATU is vehemently against any implementation of the youth subsidy, including in this bill. By not supporting this, they are keeping young people unemployed. They do have a deliberate attempt to exclude young people from the economy. It is surely very strange that COSATU is against this bill if their own studies show the positive impact of such a youth subsidy on our problem. The other benefit of this subsidy, according to Roelof Botha, is that because of indirect taxes, the Treasury can expect a fiscal dividend of about 20% of the value of the wages paid. That's good news for the Honourable Finance Minister. But all indications are that this subsidy will be a favourite and embraced by the youth and the employers, and will lead once again to the tainting of COSATU's already harmed image. It's all about perceptions in politics. If the youth turn against you, your growth potential is harmed. It must be a lesson for COSATU, and it's time for them to embrace policies that's making sense for South Africa. There was unanimous support in our committee for the sunset clause to be scrapped, and further support to get the employment date for those who can participate scrapped in this bill, or at least brought it forward to the date to when the subsidy was announced. But due to time constraints, it was not possible. Legislation in front of a committee is always a compromise. Working against time, sometimes you are forced to compromise, and even more, this was the case in this bill. But this is a positive bill, and this initiative will change the lives of thousands of young workers and allow them to grow and grab new opportunities. It will be reviewed after 2 years. Let's hope it's a success, and then we shall see the strengthening of measures introduced at such time. The bill is creating a seat for the so-called unemployed at the labour table. Hope it is now a forerunner to many changes we would like to see to streamline our labour dispensation more, lifted out by many commentators as one of the factors hampering our economic growth potential. The fact that the Honourable Minister Pravin Gordhan, with the support of the ANC caucus, has tabled this against a barricade of opposition from COSATU, is introducing a new era in the tripartite alliance relationship. COSATU's opposition as a unified force is dwindling, and maybe we can expect better policies from the government and ignoring COSATU more and more. COPE shall support this bill.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Nkomo. Honourable Members, this is Honourable Nkomo's maiden speech.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to stand before this Honourable House and deliver my maiden speech on the Employment Tax Incentive Bill. A special word of thanks to my party, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and its members for their confidence in me. Honourable Deputy Speaker, this bill comes at a time in which we find sweeping unemployment in South Africa, with our second quarter figures of this year officially topping the 25% mark, yet with many pundits stating that we are actually closer to 40% unemployment. Our Minister of Finance recently stated upon his introduction of this bill that we currently have some of the highest rates of unemployment in the world. This intervention is therefore wholly welcomed and absolutely necessary. Our youth unemployment remains at critical levels, and this bill will hopefully incentivize employers through tax breaks to employ young people between the ages of 18 and 29, as currently our youth experience extreme difficulties in securing internships or first-time gainful employment that is necessary for them to build their future careers. The government, through the National Development Plan, has set itself the goal of creating 11 million jobs by the year 2013. Without faster economic growth, this challenge of creating sustainable jobs will not be met. We, as the Inkatha Freedom Party, would like to see a holistic approach to job creation, which would encompass changes to our labor laws, which would make it easier for smaller business to create jobs, easier access to capital for small businesses, and new entrants into our economy, an improvement of our transportation infrastructure, and a liberalization of our communication sector. Whilst we do not advocate for an over-interventionist state, but rather prefer that greater emphasis be placed on the role of the private sector in promoting economic growth and employment, we do recognize that the state must get involved and the important role the state can play as a catalyst for growth. There is a national consensus on the need to open the doors to youth employment by use of the Youth Incentive Plan, and there are perhaps issues which could be further explored in the future. We cannot let our youth down. This is the time to be courageous. In conclusion, the Inkatha Freedom Party supports the Employment Tax Incentive Bill, and we look forward to seeing the creation of real and sustainable jobs as a direct result thereof. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Freiden.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. This bill has certainly been a long time coming. It had its genesis many years ago as a possible yet only partial solution to the youth unemployment crisis that we are facing in South Africa. Any measure that can in any way reduce our completely unacceptable youth unemployment rate, which is currently over 60%, has to be welcomed. We urgently have to give our youth a real stake in this economy if we are going to have any chance of building that united and prosperous South Africa that we all aspire to. We have to give the youth of this country a foot onto the economic ladder so that they can gain the necessary experience and opportunities to build a thriving career. If we deny our youth this opportunity, we will be denying all of us a stable country and a better life for all. The unemployment figures of the Quarterly Labour Service that Minister Manuel referred to earlier today bear this out. What the Minister quoted, though, was only the narrow definition of unemployment and neatly ignored all of those unemployed who have given up hope and have stopped even looking for work. If one includes those figures, then the Western Cape has the lowest rate of discouraged work seekers in the country, 10 times less than that of Gauteng. The Western Cape is in fact offering hope to the unemployed, and this is in part due to the DA government piloting a form of the youth wage subsidy. It is therefore extremely unfortunate that the youth has been forced to wait for so many years for this bill to be passed, as the factional battles within the tripartite alliance have held the dreams of our youth hostage. It should never have been this way. Close on 3,000 youth, led by the DA, were forced to march on Kusati House last year in an effort to break the stalemate that had emerged in government over this legislation. I honour those brave youth today because they were not afraid to put their bodies on the line to fight for a measure that has the potential to help all the unemployed youth in South Africa. They endured bricks being thrown at them, and they have the scars to prove that they were prepared to go to battle for the unemployed youth of this country. For that, I salute them, and let this be seen as their victory. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Alberts.
Thank you, Chair. Die Vryheidsfront Plus is op rekord dat belastingverligting in plaas van meer belastings-ekonomiese groei sal stimuleer. Die hele kwessie van belasting moet in geheel verstaan word in die land se ekonomiese stand en dit wat ons wil bereik. In 'n neutedop is dit oor en oor bewys dat ekonomiese groei net plaasvind indien die staat ophou inmeng in die mark. As for the Employment Tax Incentive Bill, we are of the view that it is a good start to lessen the tax burden of the tax-paying middle class. We are, however, of the view that it must not be limited only to employees within special economic zones, but should extend to the country as a whole. The SEZ bill has not been finalised as yet, and due to the fact that the process to declare SEZs is long-winded, it will thus take some time before the incentives can be effected. Die realiteit is dat Afrika tans onmiddellike belastingverligting nodig het. Daar is geweldige finansiële druk op die middelklas terwyl al oral nuwe belastings opduik. Tans hou 'n klein minderheid belastingbetalers die land aan die gang en dit kom al meer voor asof die ANC-regering geen respek vir hulle het nie. In plaas daarvan dat hulle gekoester word, word dit al hoe meer belastings ingestel wat tot verarming gevolg het. Voorbeelde is die e-tolstelsels wat in Gauteng geïmplementeer gaan word en die talle wat daarna landwyd gaan volg, soos paddastoele opspring. Talle pensionarisse moet hulle eiendomme verkoop omdat hulle nie meer eiendomsbelastings kan bekostig nie en so voorts. So while this bill is a step in the right direction, the other tax bills enhances a tax system that is tightening the noose around the average citizen's financial health. That is taking a place against a background where South Africa is regarded as the most vulnerable emerging market in terms of a poll of investors conducted by the influential Economist magazine. This country's economy is underperforming due to internal structures problems that keeps the true racing horses of our economy from bolting. Dit is die rasse-ideologie, verknegtheid wat gestalte gee aan perverse beleide soos regstellende aksie wat kaderontplooiing moontlik maak en meriete ignoreer en swart ekonomiese bemagtiging waarvan geen bewyse bestaan dat dit werklik werk nie, wat die ekonomie teruggehou word en almal uiteindelik benadeel. The Minister of Finance has taken a step in the right direction, but on the other end of the spectrum, there are too many steps in the wrong direction that will probably extinguish any advances arising from this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Alberts. Honourable Swart.
Deputy Speaker, the many speakers have referred to the very high levels of unemployment, poverty and inequality in our nation, and we as the ACDP join that sentiment and are similarly concerned and welcome this bill as a move in the right direction. And we recognise that it is, as this bill points out, the private sector that is the engine for the creation of jobs, and the government creates the environment for that, and that is what is foreseen in this bill. As we see it, seeks to provide an employment tax incentive to encourage job creation in the form of an amount of employees' tax that may be reduced. Now, Chairperson, as other speakers have indicated, and we know that this bill was opposed and stored by COSATU to the detriment of job creation. And it was suggested more than 3 years ago, but has only now seen the light of day. And we commend the government for taking a strong stance at this stage, standing up to COSATU, but regrettably it has taken a long time and should have been done a lot earlier. And whilst we as the ACDP wholeheartedly support the bill, we also expressed some concerns during the deliberations, such as the capping of the wage to qualify for the incentive, as we believe this in effect excludes large numbers of persons from the low-income group and those that are particularly vulnerable. And we also regret that the incentive will only apply from the 1st of October 2013, which further excludes large numbers of existing workers, as pointed out by the Honourable Harris. But we do understand as the ACDP that this is an experimental bill, it's phased one of a phased approach, and that one will be reviewing it in the future. But as we discussed in the committee, the one issue that we were unanimous about was this sunset clause that would result in the ending of this tax incentive in the year 2017. And this, we believed, would hang like a sword of Damocles over employers and youthful employees. And National Treasury made it very clear that they wanted the incentive to work, and in fact they wanted to roll it out further, and that they would in fact be reviewing it with that intention to roll it out further. So the logical approach for us was then to review the incentive in 2015-16 rather than now having a clause that ineffectively ends it at that year. And we are in effect legislating for the repeal of an act for a future parliament, which I, in my experience, have not seen before. But we understand that it would have resulted, had we insisted on the amendment, in the further delay of this incentive. So the ACDP will support this bill. We commend the government on eventually implementing this tax incentive, albeit it is in a watered-down version, and we trust that the private sector will embrace it and seek the common good of creating jobs for the youth and give them a hope for the future. Well done, Honourable Minister. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Swartz. Honourable Ross.
Thank you, Speaker. Previous speakers have indicated that today is indeed a very good day for the youth of South Africa, because the employment tax incentive has raises the expectations of thousands of young people. But we need to ask ourselves very honestly today, Minister, how strong is the current incentives? And the honest answer is, and it's been indicated by other speakers as well, that it's been unfortunately watered down to a certain extent. The employment tax incentive bill is to introduce a youth wage subsidy that we considered as a disappointment compared to the 2010 aspirations for the subsidy. But, Speaker, in its current form, it might let the young people of South Africa and the poor down because of the watered-down versions of the bill. The DA believes that the bill provides a weaker incentives for three main reasons. The bill introduces a minimum wage requirement, and existing young workers, secondly, will not be considered for the incentive. The mechanism to allow the cash payout to the employer for the incentive if a company's pay-as-you-earn bill is depleted will not be implemented immediately, and the bill gives us no indication as to the timeframes in this regard. My colleague Tim Harris has made a concerted effort to introduce a real strong youth wage subsidy. But this bill will now not introduce that strong youth wage subsidy because of the changes made to the regional 2010 policy. The cost estimates, and that's the example, of 1.3 billion to 3 billion is significantly less than the original 5 billion tax losses budgeted in 2010. And the effect to this is unfortunately reduced the
I don't think that's legitimate. I think that's the reason why Limpopo miraculously has the lowest unemployment rates in the country. And I don't think it's a fair way of looking at the problem of hopelessness in this country. So let's look at it another way. Using Stats SA's figures from this week, if you take the percentage of discouraged work seekers, people that have given up looking for work, as a percentage of the labour force between our provinces, I don't think the Deputy Minister or Honourable Manuel will have a problem with this number. It's very easy to understand. In the Northern Cape and the Free State, 7% of the labour force has given up looking for work. In Mpumalanga, 16% has. In KZN, 17% has. Eastern Cape, 20%. Northwest, 21%. Gauteng, 23%. Limpopo, 30% of the labour force has given up looking for work. 1 in 3 people in Limpopo's labour force have given up looking for work. What could the number in the Western Cape be? It gives me great pleasure to say the number in the Western Cape is 1%. 1 out of 100 people in the labour force in the Western Cape have given up looking for work. That is the DA difference. That's the difference between provinces governed by us and provinces governed by you. And I'm sure voters in next year's election will take note.
Order, please,
Thank you.
order. Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable Z.S. Dubazan
Honorable Chair, asikho nanesidingo sokuthi sibe kubo ngoba vele incwadi ibhaliwe. Honorable Chair, honorable members, good afternoon. Honorable Chair, the main reason why why the ANC-led government were to make the amendments on these two bills, which is the Tax Laws Amendment Bill and the Tax Administration Laws. It's because of the resolutions taken to its conferences. It was in the conference that the 53 conference of the National Conference, ANC conference, where it resolves that it's commit to the developmental strategy that promotes the research and innovation facilities through various incentive schemes, including tax incentives, which today the DA has got a serious problem. Now, because the ANC always address the South Africans, not an individual minister, cabinet minister within the House, I therefore, Honorable Chairperson, would like to make the South Africans be aware that that conference which took place, the ANC conference that took place on 2012, which was the National Policy Conference, which resolved, like what I've said earlier on, innovation, research, and technology development are key factors for improved productivity, which lead to new or improved products, processes, or services. This enhanced productivity in turn leads to increased economic growth and international competitiveness. However, research and development is costly, and we are all aware, but it has to be done. While South Africa offers a variety of direct subsidies for R&Ds, which is research and development, the South African tax regime for R&D also provides substantial tax incentives aimed at ensuring that local R&D is globally competitive. In moving from the previous to the current tax dispensation, which has led us to stand there and debate today, whereby companies are required to obtain pre-approval for an additional deduction of 50% of R&D related expenditure, some unintended anomalies have become apparent. The language in the current provision has led to the uncertainties in the interpretation of the legislation, and blockages have arisen in the adjudication processes. The proposed amendments will then streamline and accelerate the adjudication processes. So I don't know where is the problem with the DA, particularly for the projects in the communication and information technology and pharmaceutical related sectors. Under current law, the R&D regime is available solely in respect of the R&D undertaken within South Africa. The proposed legislation clarifies that these activities must have some level of significance, meaning that local persons should have some level of control over research methodology. Stated differently, the activities must enhance local skills development. That's what it means. One potential exception is clinical medical trials, as determined by the Department of Science and Technology. In essence, the R&D must be directed towards advancing scientific or technology knowledge, as opposed to a routine learning associated with an ongoing processes. Hence, certain specific forms of knowledge, like management, enhancement of internal business processes, sales or marketing promotion, fall outside the scope of the incentive. Honorable Chairperson, I think it is important that we need to inform the South Africans as to, for them and the private sector in particular, to understand that there are so many of these initiatives that have been taken by the ANC-led government, so as to ensure that the broad tax base is efficient and it is effective. If we look at the oil and gas incentive, in 2006, a new tax oil and gas regime was enacted within income tax. The purpose of the 10th schedule is to provide incentives for oil and gas exploration and production. Since the inception of the 10th schedule, a growing number of oil and gas exploration and production rights are now being granted under the MPRDA. Several transfers among oil and gas producers are also taking place. Then the 10th schedule also appears to contain, although the reason was that if you look at the 10th schedule, it was containing some ambiguousness and unintended outcomes in terms of the technical working. As a result, then, we were to look at the amendments and making sure that those amendments are addressed and that the people are benefiting at all levels. The international shipping too was the measure that was taken by the ANC-led government to make sure that these amendments are done so that at the end of the day, it is evenly distributed. International shipping transport conducted by the South African companies is largely subject to a corporate income tax rate of 28%. The only incentives for international shipping transport owned by the controlled foreign companies are some depreciation incentives for capital investment in shipping transport. Government has long been aware that international trend has been toward greatly reduced taxation of international shipping transport due to the highly mobile nature of this activity. It is therefore, in this bill, proposed that a new regime providing tax relief of shipping companies be introduced. In order to qualify for this relief, the company at issue must be a resident and holding at least at least one or more vessels. Thank you for your kindness. As you are aware that in our Chairperson, this amendment was mainly focusing and motivating our South Africans to make sure that we do own one or two vessels so that at the end of the day we benefit from the incentives. Small business exemption eligibility. This is one of the initiatives, Honorable Chair. I realize I'm not supposed to talk too much today. I don't know what is happening with my throat. The ANC support these two bills. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable the Minister of Finance. Honourable Minister, are you going to allay the fears?
Yes, certainly. I'm in a generous mood, so don't worry. The intention of that amendment is to actually ensure that there is easier administration on the one hand, but ultimately there should be no additional tax to be paid. So we will get back to my colleagues and give them the reassurance that they require. On the question of the DA, the Western Cape and unemployment numbers, are we going to sit here for hours and debate 1 or 2 percentage points? Or are we going to say that we have a national problem that all of us as a nation need to deal with? We can't worry about 19% or 21% or 22%. Unemployment should not be greater than 10% in this country. Let's talk about how we get to that below 10% number and focus our minds on that. Secondly, Mr. Harris, the Honourable Harris, just doesn't get it, despite repeated explanations, that forecasts are forecasts. If conditions change, numbers change, forecasts change. The IMF has changed its global growth forecasts and forecasts for different regions in the last couple of years every few months because conditions have changed. It's got nothing to do with the Treasury. It's nothing to do with our calculator. Put a different number into the forecasting grid, you'll get a different outcome. So the problem is that, Chairperson, the campaigning season has started. And that's the problem that we are confronted with. On the question of regulation, his approach is a Neanderthal approach. Free marketeers are virtually dead around the world on the question of regulation. What we require is modern, appropriate regulation. And since we've declared this as a season of campaigning. The ANC is, through this legislation, protecting our people to ensure they have decent retirement. They're supporting businesses so that they can provide housing and get a tax break for it. They are ensuring that there are incentives for investment in special economic zones. Small businesses get an easier go in terms of registering for VAT. And we are promoting R&D in these particular areas. So all in all, this is a wonderful campaigning tool. Go out and campaign and get votes for the ANC. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill being read the first time? Are there objections? Are there objections?
Yes, Chairperson, the Democratic Alliance has an objection.
There are objections. Let me start. Those in favor will say aye. Those against will say no. Sounds as if the ayes have it.
Please record the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
The objection of the Democratic Alliance will be recorded. No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill the first time.
Taxation Laws Amendment Bill.
Are there any objections to the Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill being read a second time? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Second reading debate, Taxation Laws Amendment Bill.
As there is no speakers list, I will now put the question, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? You're objecting. There's an objection from the DA. Those in favor will say aye. Those against will say no. It sounds as if the ayes have it.
Please record the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
Objections of the day will be recorded. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Taxation Laws Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. That concludes the business of the day, honourable members, and the House is adjourned. Hey, I was working.
I left my pen.
My husband just came there with my voice. Do something.